There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the truth they were taught begins to tremble under the weight of the truth they feel. And that moment, my friend, is the doorway to awakening. For centuries, humanity has followed teachings filtered through interpretation, translation, and power, but the Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete versions of the Holy Scriptures, preserves something that was never meant to be hidden, the pure, original principles of divine creation that Jesus shared with those ready to hear. What if the real message of Jesus was not about suffering, fear, or waiting for salvation, but about unlocking the infinite power already placed within you by the Creator Himself? What if His words were never meant to build walls of religion, but bridges of understanding between your human mind and divine intelligence? If you stay with me through this message, you will discover what was truly meant for those who dared to believe differently, those who knew heaven was not a place you go, but a power you grow. In the Ethiopian Bible, we find verses that emphasize not the worship of idols or rituals, but the cultivation of thought, word, and faith. Jesus taught that man was created in the image of God, not merely in flesh, but in the capacity to think, to imagine, and to speak reality into existence. He revealed that thoughts are the seeds of destiny. Every action begins as an invisible thought, and every success begins as a mental picture of victory. This was the sacred law of creation, that whatever a man holds steadily in his consciousness will one day appear in his experience. Yet over time, this teaching was buried under fear, control, and confusion. People were taught to pray for what they already possessed, to beg for what they could create, to search for power outside when the kingdom was within. The forgotten message of Jesus was not to wait for miracles, it was to become one. He never told his followers to live in limitation. He showed them how to command abundance through faith. When he said, "According to your faith, be it unto you," he revealed the divine law that still governs the universe. That belief is the substance of manifestation. The Ethiopian Bible speaks of divine wisdom as the greatest treasure, for wisdom aligns the human mind with the universal mind. It teaches that to think rightly is to pray effectively, and when the mind and spirit are in harmony, the invisible becomes visible and the impossible becomes inevitable. In these sacred writings, Jesus describes the mind as the true temple of God. He said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you, not above the clouds, not beyond death, but within the conscious awareness of man." The temple is your own consciousness, and the altar is your thought. When you think with faith, speak with conviction, and act with integrity, you enter into communion with divine law. There is no separation between you and the source of creation. You are a vessel of divine power, designed to express the infinite through your purpose and the greatest revelation of all. The Ethiopian scriptures never condemn wealth, success, or progress. They condemn ignorance, greed, and fear. Jesus never opposed prosperity. He opposed blindness to spiritual law. He taught that wealth, when guided by wisdom, becomes a sacred tool for good. The man who masters his thoughts can master his world. The woman who aligns her mind with divine order can attract everything necessary for her mission on earth. This, my friend, is what Jesus really taught his followers, that the kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness where faith, understanding, and action move in one divine rhythm. He came to awaken man to his own creative power, to show that each thought, each word, and each deed carries the spark of divine creation. He taught self-mastery, not self-pity, faith, not fear, creation, not dependence. So as you listen to these truths, ask yourself, what have I believed about my own power? What teachings have I accepted that keep me small? For the real gospel of Jesus is not about waiting for light to come from above. It is about realizing the light has always been within. When you think, believe, and act as one with divine intelligence, you become what you were always meant to be, a co-creator with God, shaping destiny through the power of conscious thought. That is the message hidden for centuries, but revealed to those who are ready to awaken. The Ethiopian Bible preserves the voice of a teacher who didn't come to create followers. He came to create creators. And that, my friend, is the truth that will set you free. There exists a power buried deep within the forgotten pages of the Ethiopian Bible, a power that has the potential to awaken humanity to the truth of its divine origin. For centuries, layers of translation, politics, and control have dimmed the brilliance of what Jesus truly revealed to his followers. He did not come merely to perform miracles that amazed the crowd. He came to awaken the sleeping mind of man to its godlike capacity. The Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most authentic records of sacred truth, holds messages that were never meant for the passive believer, but for the active creator. These texts whisper of a time when faith was not a plea for help, but a force of command, when prayer was not an escape from reality, but a deliberate act of creation. The words are not meant to make you bow in fear. They are meant to make you rise in power. When Jesus spoke to his closest disciples, he spoke not in parables of submission, but in principles of mastery. He revealed that man was not created as a servant of fate, but as a co-creator with the infinite. Every thought, he said, was a seed, every belief a blueprint, every word a vibration that sets creation into motion. But this sacred knowledge was too powerful for those who sought control over minds and kingdoms, so it was hidden, reinterpreted, and diluted until mankind forgot the very essence of its divine inheritance. The Ethiopian Bible still preserves these truths for those who seek them with open hearts and fearless minds. It tells of a kingdom not found in cathedrals or temples, but in consciousness. It reminds us that heaven is not reached by death, but by understanding. The hidden scripture of power calls man to remember who he is. It invites him to look within rather than upward, to realize that his thoughts mold the clay of his destiny. The creative process is not a mystery reserved for the divine. It is the natural operation of the mind in harmony with spirit. Jesus taught that the Father within doeth the work. This means the divine force operates through your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions. It means that your imagination is not idle. It is the workshop of God working through you. But the world has taught you to doubt, to fear, to surrender your authority to chance. The Ethiopian Bible challenges this. It declares that power belongs to the one who dares to know himself as a reflection of the Creator. Imagine what would happen if every soul realized that they were never meant to live in limitation. Imagine a world where men and women rise each day knowing their thoughts shape the events that unfold before them. This is what Jesus intended. This is what the hidden scripture of power reveals. It is not merely religion. It is revelation. It is not a call to worship blindly, but to think divinely. And when that truth takes hold of your mind, you will no longer live as a creation of circumstances, but as the architect of destiny. The greatest tragedy in human history is not that man has lost wealth or kingdoms, but that he has lost dominion, the inner authority over his own thoughts, emotions, and destiny. The Ethiopian Bible speaks of a truth that has been buried beneath centuries of fear and misunderstanding. Jesus did not teach dependency, he taught dominion. He came to show that each soul possesses the divine right and ability to govern the world within. For whoever masters his mind masters his life. The lost law of inner dominion reveals that heaven is not a place of reward after death, but a state of mastery achieved through conscious control over thought and belief. Every miracle he performed was an illustration of this truth, a demonstration that the laws of creation respond to inner conviction rather than outer circumstance. When the storm raged on the sea, he did not beg the heavens for calm. He commanded peace from within. When the blind came to him, he did not lament their condition. He awakened their vision by restoring belief. Each act was a living lesson that man was born not to bow before life, but to direct it through the power of his own consciousness. The Ethiopian scriptures remind us that dominion was man's first gift from the Creator. Let them have dominion, the ancient text declares, not over one another, but over the earth, over fear, and over the forces that appear beyond control. Yet somewhere along the way, humanity exchanged its crown of dominion for the chains of doubt. We were taught to pray for deliverance instead of commanding transformation, to wait for miracles instead of thinking miracles into existence. The lost law of inner dominion restores man to his rightful position as a co-creator with God. It teaches that thought is not a passing cloud, but the instrument through which divine energy takes form. Every belief you hold is a decree to the universe. Every emotion a magnetic current that draws its likeness into your experience. The Ethiopian Bible calls this alignment walking with the Spirit, which simply means thinking as God thinks, constructively, creatively, and fearlessly. When your inner world is disciplined, your outer world obeys. When your mind is centered in faith rather than fear, the universe begins to reflect your command. To rediscover dominion is to return to divine law. It is to understand that your word has power, that your thought is sacred, and that your emotions are the language through which you speak to creation itself. This is why Jesus taught that faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains. For faith is not mere belief, it is inner dominion. It is the unwavering certainty that divine intelligence within you will manifest through you. And once you reclaim this truth, you cease to be a victim of circumstance. You become the ruler of your fate, the master of your mind, and the living expression of divine order moving through human form. Hidden within the Ethiopian Bible lies a principle so powerful that it can transform any life that truly understands it. The sacred formula of creation. This principle was the essence of what Jesus taught those closest to him, yet it has been concealed by centuries of misinterpretation. The formula is simple yet profound: thought, word, and action. These three form the divine trinity of manifestation. They are the instruments through which man creates his reality, the sacred process by which the invisible becomes visible. Every miracle performed by Jesus followed this exact pattern. He thought with divine certainty, spoke with unshakable conviction, and acted in complete harmony with faith. And what followed was always transformation: water into wine, sickness into health, lack into abundance. He was demonstrating to humanity the science of divine creation that operates within every thinking soul. The Ethiopian Bible emphasizes that man was created in the image and likeness of God, not in physical form, but in creative function. God imagined the universe, spoke it into existence, and set it in motion. Man, being made in that likeness, possesses the same pattern of power on a smaller scale. Your thought is the seed, your word is the command, and your action is the manifestation. When all three operate in unity, creation responds with precision. This is why Jesus said, "If you believe in your heart and do not doubt, it shall be done unto you." He was not speaking poetry, he was describing law. The universe is orderly, it obeys the vibration of your consciousness. The tragedy is that humanity was taught to think one thing, speak another, and act against both, creating confusion and chaos in the mind and therefore in life. The sacred formula demands alignment. It requires that your thoughts are born of faith, your words are spoken with authority, and your actions follow with discipline. When these three move as one, you become a vessel through which divine intelligence expresses itself fully. The Ethiopian text described this as the breath of God moving through man, meaning the divine energy that takes form through the conscious mind of one who knows his power. To master this formula is to understand the structure of all creation, both spiritual and material. A farmer plants a seed, nurtures it, and reaps a harvest. A thinker holds an idea, nourishes it with belief, and receives results. The same law governs both, for creation knows no difference between physical and spiritual forms. It only responds to vibration and faith. Every word you speak sets energy in motion. Every thought you hold becomes a living force seeking expression. When Jesus taught that the Word was with God and the Word was God, he was revealing that speech, when charged with belief, is divine power in motion. The sacred formula of creation is not hidden from you. It is operating within you at this very moment. The question is not whether it works, but whether you are conscious enough to direct it. Within the pages of the Ethiopian Bible lies one of the most profound revelations ever given to man, that the true temple of God is not made of stone, nor built by human hands, but exists within the consciousness of every living soul. When Jesus declared, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he was not speaking in metaphor. He was revealing that divine power, wisdom, and presence dwell in the inner sanctum of the human mind. For centuries, humanity has searched for God in distant places, in sacred buildings, and in rituals performed by others. Yet the truth preserved in these ancient texts calls man to turn inward, to realize that the altar of creation resides in his own thought. The temple is not a location. It is a condition of awareness. It is a place where the finite meets the infinite, where thought communes with divine intelligence. The Ethiopian scriptures make it clear that the mind is the sacred vessel through which God expresses himself. Every idea inspired by love, truth, and faith is a prayer rising from that inner temple. Every pure thought is an offering upon its altar. This understanding transforms the way we see life and spirituality. It teaches that worship is not limited to words spoken on holy days, but is expressed in every moment we think righteously, speak kindly, and act in harmony with divine law. In this temple, there is no separation between the Creator and the created, for thought is the bridge between both. When man learns to guard this sacred space from fear, doubt, and negativity, he keeps his inner temple pure. and through it, divine energy flows freely into his life. The tragedy of humanity's forgetfulness is that we have allowed false teachings to make us believe that God is far away, that we must seek permission to access his presence. But the Ethiopian Bible restores the truth that the mind aligned with divine law becomes the very dwelling place of God. The thoughts you hold are not idle, they are creative forces shaping your world. The more you fill your mind with faith, gratitude, and vision, the more your inner temple radiates the power of creation. Every time you silence doubt and choose belief, you cleanse the temple. Every time you replace fear with purpose, you open its gates wider to divine wisdom. The mind as the temple of God means that your consciousness is sacred ground. It is where heaven is built one thought at a time. To think rightly is to build with gold. To think negatively is to crumble the walls of your spiritual sanctuary. When Jesus performed miracles, he was not accessing a power outside himself. He was activating the divine presence within. The same power waits within every human mind, unchanging and eternal. When you awaken to this truth, you realize that the temple of God has never been lost. It has only been forgotten. In the ancient writings of the Ethiopian Bible lies a truth that shatters centuries of misunderstanding, that Jesus never condemned wealth. He condemned ignorance, greed, and spiritual blindness. The forgotten promise of these sacred texts is that abundance, when guided by divine wisdom, is not a sin but a sacred duty. Prosperity was never meant to be worshipped, but neither was it meant to be feared. Wealth, in its purest form, is simply the visible expression of divine order, the result of aligning one's thoughts, beliefs, and actions with the higher laws of creation. The Ethiopian scriptures reveal that wisdom and wealth are companions, never enemies. One sustains the soul, the other sustains the mission. Without wisdom, wealth corrupts. Without wealth, wisdom lacks expression. Together, they form the perfect balance of spiritual and material mastery that Jesus sought to restore to humanity. Jesus taught that the mind, when governed by faith, becomes the greatest source of riches. He declared that those who seek first the kingdom, the divine consciousness within, will find that all other things are added unto them. This was not a promise of charity from heaven, but a law of creation. To think in harmony with divine principles is to open the flow of supply, every need in the material world is first answered in the spiritual realm of thought. The Ethiopian Bible teaches that man was never designed to beg for what he can create. Poverty of thought is the true poverty of life. When the mind becomes rich with understanding, the hands naturally produce abundance. The tragedy of modern belief is that it glorifies struggle and condemns prosperity, mistaking humility for helplessness and holiness for lack. But in the wisdom of these ancient scriptures, we find the truth restored, that abundance is the natural state of a soul in harmony with divine law. Wealth, when earned through right thought and right action, becomes a channel through which good flows to others. It is not accumulation, but circulation that keeps riches alive. When you give from abundance, you multiply it. When you hoard from fear, you destroy its flow. The Ethiopian text reminds us that the wise man stores not treasures for greed, but for service, for the expansion of divine purpose on earth. True wealth, therefore, begins in the invisible, in clarity of purpose, in disciplined thought, and in the unwavering faith that the universe responds to order. Wisdom gives direction to power. Power gives form to purpose. When Jesus taught about the talents, he was not speaking of coins, but of consciousness. Each mind was given the capacity to multiply, to expand, to create. Those who buried their talent buried their potential. Those who used it unlocked the principle of increase. The forgotten promise of wealth and wisdom is the reminder that you were never created to live in lack. You were created to manifest abundance with grace, to use it wisely, and to let your prosperity become a living testimony of divine intelligence expressing itself through you. The greatest awakening of any age begins when mankind returns to the source, to the pure, unaltered teaching that existed before interpretation, politics, and fear reshaped divine truth. The Ethiopian Bible, older and more complete than many modern versions, preserves this original current of wisdom. It reveals that Jesus never came to create followers. He came to awaken creators. His mission was not to establish religion, but to restore remembrance, the remembrance that the kingdom of heaven is not a destination beyond death, but a state of consciousness within life. The return to this original teaching is the rebirth of spiritual independence, the rediscovery of man's divine identity, and the reclaiming of power that was never truly lost, only forgotten in the Ethiopian scriptures. The message is clear. The Christ power is not confined to one man in history. It is the divine potential within every soul. When Jesus said, "These things I do, you shall do also," he was not speaking in symbol. He was giving a command, a prophecy of what awakened consciousness would one day achieve. Yet, through centuries of distortion, humanity turned this truth into distance. Instead of striving to become the expression of divine power, men began to merely worship it. The original teaching was about transformation, not imitation, about becoming one with the universal mind through the disciplined use of thought, faith, and purpose. To return to this teaching is to understand that salvation is not something given. It is something realized. It is the moment you remember that the same intelligence that moves galaxies lives within your own mind. The Ethiopian Bible reminds us that the kingdom cannot be found in temples built by hands, for it is written upon the heart. The real gospel is the science of consciousness, the understanding that thought, belief, and emotion are creative forces that determine destiny. The man who masters them lives in heaven on earth. The one who neglects them builds his own hell through ignorance. This is the truth that organized systems feared. That man needs no mediator between himself and God, for he and God are one in essence. The return to the original teaching restores this connection. It lifts humanity from dependence into dominion, from fear into understanding, from worshiping truth to living it. When you awaken to this realization, you no longer seek the light outside. You become the light. The Ethiopian scriptures echo this through every page. The divine is not apart from you, it is expressing through you. The return to the original teaching is the great calling of this era. It is the restoration of inner vision, the end of blind belief, and the rebirth of divine self-awareness. The same power that spoke worlds into being now whispers within your soul, urging you to remember, and when that remembrance dawns, when man again knows that heaven is a state of mind and creation is his birthright, the forgotten truth will live again, not in books or temples, but in the awakened heart of humanity. And so, we return full circle, from the forgotten pages of the Ethiopian Bible to the awakening of divine remembrance within the human soul. The message hidden for centuries was never meant to be mysterious, nor reserved for the chosen few. It was a message of power, of freedom, of creation. Jesus came to reveal not religion, but realization, not submission, but mastery. His teachings were not chains of ritual, but keys of liberation. The Ethiopian Bible preserves this truth in its purest light. That man is the living image of divine intelligence, endowed with the power to think, to speak, and to create as God creates. The kingdom of heaven, he said, is within you, not beyond the stars, not behind the clouds, but here in the silent workshop of your own consciousness. Every thought you hold, every word you speak, and every action you take is a prayer shaping your reality. You were never meant to wait for miracles. You were designed to manifest them. The power that moved through Jesus moves through you now. The same laws that governed his words govern yours. The same divine intelligence that answered his faith waits to respond to yours. The world has been searching for salvation outside, yet the real temple has always been within. When you quiet the noise of fear, when you align your mind with truth, when you speak with conviction and act with faith, you rediscover the law of life itself. You awaken the Creator within the creation. You remember that you are not a servant of chance, but an instrument of divine order. And when that remembrance becomes your daily consciousness, your life ceases to be ordinary. It becomes a living revelation. This is what the Ethiopian Bible reveals, what Jesus really taught his followers, that the Spirit of God is not to be worshipped from afar, but to be expressed from within, that heaven is not a reward, it is awareness, that wealth is not sin, it is divine circulation guided by wisdom, and that faith is not hope, it is mastery. So, as we close this message, take these words not as knowledge to remember, but as power to embody. Let your thoughts become instruments of light. Let your words build worlds of faith. Let your actions reflect the wisdom of the infinite. For the truth has always been this: you are the continuation of divine creation. You are the living evidence that God still speaks through man. And when you finally realize that the same light that shone through the Master burns within you, you will no longer ask where the kingdom of heaven is. You will know that you are standing in it.